Emma's seemingly perfect marriage to Ryan shatters when she discovers his frequent business trips are lies and that he's been cheating with multiple women, including a pregnant girlfriend. As Emma uncovers his deceit, she faces emotional manipulation, harassment and betrayal, with Ryan going to extreme lengths to keep his lies hidden. The story intensifies as Emma fights back, revealing Ryan's manipulation and the damage he caused, leaving the audience furious at his actions and rooting for Emma's quest for justice and self-empowerment. The tension builds as Emma confronts the harsh reality of her marriage. You know, they say trust is the foundation of every good relationship, and I believed that, until my entire world came crashing down. Hi, I'm Emma, and I'm about to tell you how I uncovered the biggest betrayal of my life. Let's rewind a bit so you can understand where it all started. I'm 32, and for most of my adult life, I thought I had it all: an amazing career in marketing, a gorgeous suburban home, and most importantly, a seemingly perfect husband named Ryan. We met in college, and let me tell you, he was every girl's dream back then. Handsome, charming, and with a career in finance that had successful written all over it. From the outside, we looked like the couple everyone aspired to be, but as I'd later learn, appearances can be deceiving. Ryan travelled a lot for work. Like, a lot. He was always jetting off to different cities, attending conferences or meeting with clients. At first, I didn't question it. After all, he was climbing the corporate ladder, and I was so proud of him. I'd send him off with a kiss and wait for his late-night texts about how exhausted he was but how much he missed me, and I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? I mean, we'd been together for nearly a decade and we never had any serious issues. Or so I thought. But looking back now, there were signs, little things I brushed off because I trusted him. Like how he started keeping his phone on silent, or how he suddenly got really weird about letting me do the laundry. He claimed he didn't want me to waste my time folding his shirts, but now I know better. Anyway, the story really kicks off a few months ago when Ryan was supposed to fly to Dallas for a big client pitch. It was the usual routine. I kissed him goodbye, told him to text me when he landed, and went about my day. But that night, something strange happened. I couldn't sleep, so I opened my laptop to finish some work. While scrolling through my emails, I noticed a flight confirmation, and no, it wasn't mine. It was Ryan's, except it wasn't for Dallas, it was for Miami. At first I thought maybe it was a layover, but then I saw the hotel reservation. It was a beachfront resort, not exactly the kind of place you'd stay for business meetings. My stomach dropped. I tried to stay calm, telling myself there had to be a logical explanation. Maybe the Dallas trip got cancelled last minute, and he didn't have time to tell me. But a tiny voice in my head kept whispering, what if? I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I called Ryan, trying to sound casual. He picked up after a few rings, and the background noise didn't sound like a hotel lobby or an airport. It sounded quiet. Too quiet. When I asked him how Dallas was, he hesitated just for a second. Oh, it's fine, he said. Long day, just getting ready for bed. Something about his tone set off alarm bells, but instead of confronting him, I decided to play it cool. I didn't want to accuse him without proof, so I said goodnight, hung up, and spent the next 2 hours spiraling. By the next morning, my curiosity, or paranoia, got the better of me. I called the hotel in Miami, pretending to be his assistant, and asked if he had checked in. And that's when I got my first real confirmation. The woman at the desk said, "Yes, Mr. Ryan Clark checked in yesterday afternoon. Would you like me to leave him a message?" I hung up. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. But here's the thing. I still wasn't ready to believe the worst. I told myself, maybe he just wanted a break. Maybe work was stressing him out, and he needed some time alone. I clung to that thought because the alternative was too painful to accept. But my gut wouldn't let it go. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. I booked a flight to Miami. I didn't tell Ryan. I didn't tell anyone. I just packed a small bag, called in sick, and left. By the time I landed, my nerves were shot. My hands were shaking as I hailed a cab to the hotel, and that's when everything started falling apart. I arrived at the resort and spotted him almost immediately, sitting by the pool with a woman, not a colleague, not a friend. She was younger, maybe mid-20s, with long blonde hair and a bikini that left little to the imagination. They were laughing, leaning close, and sipping drinks like they didn't have a care in the world. I froze. For a second, I thought about walking away, pretending I never saw it. But then, the anger hit me. I marched right up to their table, my heels clicking so loud on the tiles that people turned to look. "Ryan," I said, my voice trembling. His face went pale. The woman looked confused, then annoyed, like I was ruining her vacation. "Emma, what are you doing here?" I couldn't even answer. I just stared at him, waiting for an explanation, an apology, something. Instead, he stammered out some pathetic excuse about a work retreat. And that's when I lost it. I grabbed his drink and threw it in his lap. It wasn't my proudest moment, but honestly, it felt amazing. He jumped up, sputtering, and tried to pull me aside, but I wasn't having it. The woman, who I later learned was his assistant, looked more annoyed than guilty, like I was inconveniencing her. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't a one-time thing. This had been going on for a while. I walked away before he could say another word. And let me tell you, the fallout. It was just getting started. So there I was, storming out of a luxury resort in Miami, with my head spinning and my heart pounding like a drum. I wish I could say I felt powerful, like some strong heroine in a movie, but the truth, I felt like I was going to throw up. I barely made it back to my hotel room before the tears started. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the drinks by the pool, the way he laughed with her like they didn't have a care in the world. And the worst part, the way he looked at me when I confronted him, like I was the crazy one. But let's be real. Was I crazy? I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe there was some twisted explanation that made sense, and I'd jumped to conclusions. And that's when my phone buzzed. It was Ryan. The first text was the classic, "We need to talk." I ignored it. Then came the next one. "You're blowing this out of proportion. She's just a co-worker." Oh, really? A co-worker in a bikini who just happened to be sipping piña coladas with him at a beachfront resort? Yeah, no. But instead of replying, I did something even more unhinged. I started digging. Call it instincts or desperation, but I suddenly needed answers. Real answers. And let me tell you, what I found. It made my stomach drop all over again. I logged into our shared bank account, something I hadn't done in months because, let's be honest, Ryan had always handled the finances. Big mistake. There were charges I didn't recognize. Fancy dinners, spa appointments, and jewelry stores in cities I knew he'd visited for work. The receipts went back months. That's when it hit me. This wasn't new. Ryan wasn't just having an affair, he was funding it. And the worst part, he was using our money. Suddenly, the humiliation I felt in Miami turned into something sharper. Rage. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was pissed, but I wasn't about to let him know that. Not yet. Instead, I stayed quiet. I blocked his number, packed my bags, and took the next flight home. And that's when things really started falling apart. When I got back, Ryan was already waiting for me. He was sitting in the living room like nothing had happened, scrolling through his phone and sipping coffee. "Emma," he said, standing up like I hadn't just caught him red-handed. "We need to talk." I folded my arms. "Oh, we're definitely going to talk." But before I could even get the words out, he launched into his excuse, a classic gaslighting performance, honestly. He said I'd misinterpreted everything that the trip was last minute, and he didn't want to stress me out, so he didn't tell me the change of plans. And the woman? Apparently, she was just helping him unwind after a stressful week of meetings. You know, because nothing screams professional like poolside drinks and flirty laughter. I let him ramble for a while, watching as he tried to spin his web of lies, and then I hit him with the receipts, literally. I tossed the printed bank statements onto the coffee table. "Care to explain these?" The colour drained from his face so fast I almost felt bad for him. Almost. And that's when he switched tactics. Instead of denying it, he started blaming me. He said I'd been distant lately, too focused on work, and that he felt neglected. Neglected? This man had been flying first class to secret vacations while I was at home working late to help pay for our mortgage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But then came the kicker. He actually had the audacity to ask me to forgive him. Yeah, you heard that right. Ryan said he'd made a mistake and wanted to work through it. He even started crying, actual tears, and said he'd end it with her. For a split second, I almost fell for it. But then I remembered the charges, the lies, the way he looked at me in Miami, like I was the one ruining his perfect little setup, and I realized I deserved better. So I told him to pack his things. Of course, he didn't take it well. He said I was overreacting and accused me of throwing away everything we built. But let's be honest, he was the one who destroyed it. I wasn't the one sneaking around and spending thousands of dollars on secret trips. And speaking of money, that's when I decided I needed a lawyer. Because if he thought he was going to walk away from this mess without consequences, he had another thing coming. But before I get to that part, let me just remind you, if you're still watching, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more crazy stories like this one. I promise it only gets wilder from here. Anyway, where were we? Oh, right, Ryan. After he left, I started digging even deeper. And what I found? Let's just say Miami wasn't the only destination he'd lied about. There were hotel bookings in New York, Vegas, and even Paris. And guess what? The same woman's name popped up in some of those receipts. It was like a punch to the gut. But instead of crying about it, I started documenting everything. Bank statements, emails, text messages, you name it. Because if Ryan thought this divorce was going to be easy, he was about to learn the hard way that I wasn't playing around. And trust me, the next part of this story, it's where things really start to get messy. So there I was, standing in the ruins of my marriage, surrounded by piles of bank statements, screenshots, and broken promises. And let me tell you, if you've ever been cheated on, you know that the anger doesn't just simmer, it boils. But the thing about anger, it has a way of sharpening your focus. I wasn't just mad anymore. I was ready to fight back and make sure Ryan paid for every single lie he told. First things first, I got a lawyer. Her name was Megan, and she was exactly the kind of woman you want in your corner when your life is falling apart. Sharp, fearless, and completely unfazed by drama. After I laid out the entire situation, Miami, the secret charges, the receipts, Megan didn't even blink. "We're going to make him regret everything," she said. And I believed her. But before we could even get the divorce papers ready, Ryan started spiraling. Apparently, he thought I'd just cry about the affair and take him back like some lovesick fool. When he realized I wasn't backing down, the man completely lost it. He started showing up at the house unannounced, banging on the door like a lunatic. One time he even brought flowers and said he wanted to fix things. Fix things. After Miami. After her? Yeah, no. But here's where it gets worse. Because Ryan wasn't just trying to win me back, he was trying to destroy me. I came home one day to find my car keyed, a deep scratch that ran the entire length of the driver's side. Coincidence? I didn't think so. And then there were the rumors. Suddenly, mutual friends were telling me they'd heard I was the cheater, that I had driven Ryan away because I couldn't keep it together. You see, Ryan wasn't just a liar. He was a manipulator. But I wasn't about to let him rewrite the narrative. So I did what any self-respecting woman in my position would do. I fought fire with fire. I hired a private investigator. And let me just say, if you ever need dirt on someone, these people are good. Within a week, I had photos, videos, and timestamps. Ryan hadn't just been seeing one woman, he'd been seeing three. 3 women in 3 different cities. And that's when I knew. I wasn't dealing with a mistake or a midlife crisis. I was dealing with a serial cheater. But the real kicker? One of the women was pregnant. Yeah, pregnant. I'll never forget the moment Megan slid the report across the table and said, "You're going to want to sit down for this." I didn't sit down. I stood there, staring at the photos of Ryan with his arm around her, his hand on her stomach like they were posing for a maternity shoot. And all I could think was, what kind of person does this? But instead of falling apart, I doubled down. Because if Ryan wanted to play dirty, I was about to show him how messy things could really get. The next day, I filed for divorce, and Megan. She made sure the papers were delivered to Ryan's office, right in the middle of his weekly team meeting. Petty may be satisfying, absolutely. But that was just the beginning. Ryan didn't take the divorce filing well. He tried to sweet-talk me at first, saying we could work things out and go to counseling. When that didn't work, he flipped the script and started threatening me, saying he'd take the house, the car, and everything we owned. He even told me he'd drag the divorce out for years if he had to. But what Ryan didn't know, I was 10 steps ahead of him. While he was busy playing games, I was gathering evidence. Emails, text messages, bank statements, everything Megan needed to make sure he didn't walk away with a single dime more than he deserved. And just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, I got a call from the pregnant girlfriend. Yeah, you heard that right. Apparently Ryan had been feeding her the same lies he fed me, telling her he was in a loveless marriage and was on the verge of divorce. She wanted to meet, and honestly, I wasn't sure if I was ready for that conversation. But curiosity got the better of me. So there I was, sitting in a coffee shop across from a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine cover. And let me tell you, the awkwardness was palpable. At first, she was defensive. She said she didn't know about me, and that Ryan had told her we were already separated. But the longer we talked, the more her anger shifted, from me to him, because as it turned out, Ryan had been lying to her too. He'd told her she was the only woman in his life. And when I showed her the photos of him with the other women, she completely broke down. I'll admit, it was hard to feel sorry for her at first. But as we kept talking, I realized she wasn't the villain here. She was just another victim of Ryan's endless lies. By the end of the conversation, we'd gone from enemies to allies. And what happened next? Let's just say Ryan never saw it coming. But before I dive into that chaos, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying this story so far. Trust me, there's still so much more to come. So there I was, sitting in a coffee shop with Ryan's pregnant girlfriend, let's call her Lily, trying to make sense of the disaster he'd created. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. Lily was devastated. She kept apologizing, saying she had no idea Ryan was still married, and honestly, I believed her. Because the more we talked, the clearer it became. Ryan was a professional liar. He told her everything she wanted to hear, that he was unhappy, that we hadn't been intimate in years, that I was cold and controlling. Sound familiar? Because those were the exact same excuses he gave me when I caught him in Miami. But here's where it gets even worse. Lily wasn't just pregnant, she was 7 months pregnant, which meant Ryan had been seeing her long before I ever found out about the Miami trip. And if you're thinking, wow, this can't get any more twisted, buckle up, because it does. After Lily and I compared timelines, we realized something horrifying. Ryan had proposed to her. Yep. While he was still married to me, he'd promised her a future, bought her a ring, and even told her they'd start a new life together once the baby was born. I couldn't believe it. But what hit me the hardest wasn't just the betrayal. It was the realization that Ryan had never planned to come clean. He was ready to live a double life forever, bouncing between 2 families like it was no big deal. And that's when I knew I couldn't let him get away with it. So Lily and I came up with a plan. It started with her texting him, saying they needed to talk about the baby. Of course, Ryan responded right away, acting all sweet and concerned, because let's face it, he didn't know the storm that was coming. We arranged to meet at his office later that week. But what Ryan didn't know was that I'd also be there, with my lawyer. And when the day finally came, I was ready. I walked into that office like a woman on a mission. Megan was right behind me, holding the divorce papers and a folder full of evidence, and Lily. She was sitting in the waiting area, pretending to be the clueless girlfriend. Ryan's face turned white the second he saw me. Emma, what are you doing here? I didn't answer. Instead, I handed him the folder and said, you might want to sit down. I wish I could say he took it like a man, but nope. Ryan completely lost it. He started yelling, calling me vindictive and crazy. But Megan shut him down real quick. She laid out every single detail, the cheating, the secret accounts, the photos, and told him he had 2 options. Option 1, sign the divorce papers and walk away quietly. Option 2, go to court and risk losing everything, And let me tell you, watching his face go from rage to panic, it was priceless. But the real kicker came when Lily stood up and said, "You forgot to mention the baby." You should have seen his face. He looked like he'd just been hit by a truck. Because up until that moment, Ryan thought Lily and I didn't know about each other. He had no idea we'd been working together behind his back. And let me tell you, the meltdown that followed. It was spectacular. He tried to backpedal, saying it wasn't what it looked like and that he needed time to explain. But neither of us was buying it. I handed him a pen and said, "Sign the papers, Ryan." And guess what? He did. Because for once in his life, Ryan realized he wasn't in control. But don't get too comfortable, because this story isn't over yet. Remember how I mentioned Ryan's secret bank accounts? Well, Megan dug even deeper and found out he'd been funneling money into offshore accounts for years. And let's just say the IRS wasn't too happy about it. I didn't even have to lift a finger. By the time the divorce was finalized, Ryan was facing charges for tax fraud. And the best part, Lily sued him for child support and won. So now, instead of living his double life, Ryan's stuck paying alimony to me and child support to Lily, while also trying to avoid jail time. It's funny how karma works, isn't it? But before we wrap this up, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying this story. Trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next, because just when I thought it was over, Ryan came crawling back. I thought I was done with Ryan. The divorce papers were signed. The evidence was stacked against him. Lily had won her child support case, and the IRS was circling him like vultures. But of course, Ryan wasn't the type to go down without a fight, or in this case, without one last desperate attempt to drag me back into his chaos. It started with a phone call. I was at home, finally starting to feel normal again, when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Emma!" His voice came through the line, shaky and desperate. I almost hung up right then and there, but against my better judgment, I stayed on the line. "What do you want, Ryan?" I asked, already bracing for the nonsense that was about to follow. And oh boy, he didn't disappoint. He started rambling, something about how he was sorry and didn't know what he was thinking. He said he missed me, that he'd changed. And get this, he actually had the nerve to say we should give it another try. I nearly laughed out loud. Was this guy serious? After everything he'd done, the cheating, the lies, the secret baby, and he thought he could just waltz back into my life like nothing happened. But then he dropped a bombshell. "I need your help," he said. Help. Apparently, things had gone from bad to worse for Ryan. The IRS was freezing his accounts, his job had let him go, and Lily had filed a restraining order after he showed up at her apartment, begging to see the baby. He was broke alone and drowning in legal trouble, and now he was turning to me for help. Can you believe that? I let him talk for a few more minutes, mostly because I wanted to hear just how pathetic he'd gotten. But then I cut him off. "You made your bed, Ryan," I said. "Now lie in it." And then I hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. Because a few days later, I came home to find Ryan sitting in his car outside my house. He wasn't just waiting, he was watching. Now let me just say, at this point, I wasn't scared of Ryan, but I was furious. I marched right up to his car and knocked on the window. "What the hell are you doing here?" I demanded. He tried to act calm, but I could see the panic in his eyes. "I just want to talk," he said, rolling down the window. "Well, I don't," I snapped. "So leave." But he didn't. Instead, he started rambling again, about how he was losing everything and needed someone to believe in him. I told him to leave before I called the cops, and that's when his mask slipped. "You're going to regret this," he hissed, his voice dripping with venom. And for the first time, I saw the real Ryan, the one who'd been hiding behind fake smiles and empty promises. He wasn't sorry. He was angry, because I'd beaten him at his own game and he couldn't stand it. But guess what? I wasn't scared. I pulled out my phone and started dialing 911. Ryan panicked and sped off, but I made sure to get his license plate number and file a report. And you know what? That was the last time I ever saw him. Apparently, the cops caught up with him a few weeks later. He was arrested for violating Lily's restraining order and trying to access one of his frozen accounts illegally. I can't say I was surprised, but what did surprise me was how much better I felt after he was finally out of my life. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't worrying about what lies I'd uncover next, or whether the man I loved was hiding something from me. I was free, and let me tell you, it felt amazing. But before I wrap this up, let me just remind you, if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Because trust me, this story might be over, but I've got plenty more where that came from. I thought Ryan's arrest would be the end of it. I mean, how much more damage could he possibly cause from behind bars? But I should have known better. Because if there's one thing I've learned about Ryan, it's that he doesn't go down without a fight, and this time he went all in. It started with the letters. At first, they were just apologies. Pages and pages of handwritten pleas for forgiveness. He said he was working on himself and finally facing his demons. He begged me to visit him, and for a split second, I almost felt bad for him. But then the letters changed. The apologies turned into threats. He said I'd ruined his life and that he'd make sure I paid for it. He even hinted that he had friends who could take care of things while he was locked up, and that's when the fear set in. Because even though Ryan was behind bars, his words felt like a noose tightening around my neck. So I did what I had to do. I got a restraining order. It wasn't easy, but Megan pulled every string she could, and within a week, the order was in place. And just like that, the letters stopped. For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. But then, because of course there's a but, I got a call from Megan. Apparently Ryan had been released on bail. I couldn't believe it. The man had violated multiple court orders, drained our accounts, and cheated his way through half the country, and he was still free to walk around. I was furious. But more than that, I was terrified, because if Ryan was out, that meant he could come back. And this time, I wasn't sure I'd be able to stop him. So, I took precautions. I changed my locks, installed cameras, even got a security system with 24/7 monitoring. I wasn't taking any chances. But despite all that, the anxiety never went away. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows, and checking the cameras every 5 minutes. And then, it happened. One night, I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. My heart stopped. I grabbed my phone and checked the cameras, and sure enough, there he was. Ryan, standing in my backyard, staring straight into the camera like he knew I was watching. I called the police immediately, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. And just like that, the nightmare started all over again. The cops took my statement, checked the footage, and said they'd increase patrols around the neighborhood. But that wasn't enough for me. I needed more. So I reached out to Lily. I figured if anyone else had a reason to be scared of Ryan, it was her. And sure enough, she'd been dealing with the same thing. Late-night calls, cryptic texts, and even a car that followed her home from work. We were both living in fear, and we were done. So, we came up with a plan. We didn't just want Ryan out of our lives, we wanted him gone for good. And let me tell you what we did next. It might have been a little extreme, but desperate times call for desperate measures. We gathered every piece of evidence we had, texts, emails, surveillance footage, and went straight to the DA. We laid it all out, the stalking, the harassment, the threats, and begged them to take action. And finally, someone listened. Within a week, Ryan was back in court, and this time, the judge didn't go easy on him. He was denied bail and charged with multiple counts, including harassment, breaking and entering, and violating a restraining order. And just like that, Ryan was out of our lives, for good. I wish I could say I felt victorious, but the truth, I just felt tired. Because no matter how much justice I got, nothing could undo the damage he caused. But here's the thing. Surviving Ryan didn't break me. It made me stronger. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from this story, it's this. Never let anyone make you feel powerless, because no matter how bad things get, you can fight back, and you will come out stronger. Thanks for sticking with me through this roller coaster of a story. And hey, Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe if you want more wild tales like this one. I should have felt safe. Ryan was back in jail, and this time the charges were serious enough to keep him there. But even with him locked up, I couldn't shake the feeling that this nightmare wasn't over. Because here's the thing about guys like Ryan. They don't give up. And sure enough, just when I started to let my guard down, the phone calls started again. Blocked numbers. No messages, just silence. At first I tried to ignore it, convincing myself it was spam or a wrong number. But then one night, I picked up, and what I heard froze me to my core. It was Ryan's voice. "Miss me?" I hung up immediately and called the police. They assured me it was impossible. Ryan was still behind bars, but that didn't explain how he knew my new phone number or why the calls kept coming. I was spiraling again, jumping at every shadow and double-checking every lock. But then something clicked. Ryan wasn't calling me. Not directly, anyway. He was using someone else, someone on the outside, to do his dirty work. And that's when I started piecing everything together. Remember Lily? She'd been scared, just like me. But lately, she'd been acting different, more distant, hard to reach. And when I finally got a hold of her, she sounded off. Nervous, almost like she didn't want to talk to me. My gut told me something was wrong. So, I did what I always do. I started digging. And what I found? It nearly knocked the wind out of me. Lily hadn't just been talking to Ryan, she'd been visiting him. She even put money into his commissary account, which explained how he'd been able to keep making calls. But the worst part? Lily wasn't doing it because she missed him. She was doing it because she still believed him. Ryan had convinced her that I was the villain in all of this, that I'd set him up and ruined his life out of jealousy. And Lily, she fell for it. Hook, line and sinker. I couldn't believe it. After everything Ryan had done to her, to us, she was still under his spell, and now she was helping him get revenge. I knew I had to confront her, so I asked her to meet me, somewhere public, where I wouldn't feel cornered, and let me tell you, that conversation, it was brutal. Lily showed up looking frazzled, her hair in a messy bun and dark circles under her eyes. She barely sat down before I hit her with the truth. "I know you've been talking to Ryan," I said, "and I know you've been helping him." She tried to deny it at first, but when I showed her the receipts, the money transfers, the phone logs, she broke down. "He said he loved me," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "He said we could fix this." Fix this? Ryan wasn't trying to fix anything. He was manipulating her, just like he'd manipulated me. But instead of yelling or blaming her, I did something unexpected. I reached across the table and took her hand. "Lily," I said, "you deserve better than this." She didn't believe me at first. But the more we talked, the more the truth started to sink in. And by the end of our conversation, she agreed to cut ties with Ryan, for good this time. Of course, I wasn't about to take her word for it. So, Megan and I filed another restraining order, this time against Lily, just to be safe. And once again, I thought it was over. But Ryan, he still had one more trick up his sleeve. Because just when I thought I'd finally won, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Ryan's lawyer. Apparently, he was contesting the divorce settlement, claiming I'd hidden assets and misrepresented the facts during the proceedings. Are you kidding me? This man had cheated, lied, and broken the law, and now he wanted my money. I was livid. But instead of falling apart, I called Megan, and let me tell you, she was ready. We went straight to court, armed with every piece of evidence we had. The texts, the emails, the surveillance footage, you name it. And this time, Ryan didn't stand a chance. The judge threw out his case in less than 10 minutes, and Megan made sure he left that courtroom with even more legal fees than before. Watching him storm out, red-faced and humiliated, felt like the closure I'd been waiting for. But it also reminded me of how far I'd come. Because a year ago, I was the woman who trusted Ryan, the woman who believed his lies and defended his actions. But now, I was the woman who took him down. And let me tell you, it felt good. But before I wrap this up, let me just remind you, if you've enjoyed this story so far, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more. Because as wild as this ride has been, I've got plenty more stories to share. I wish I could tell you that walking out of that courtroom was the end of it, that Ryan finally learned his lesson and disappeared into whatever miserable corner of the world he belonged in. But of course, that's not how these stories go. Because Ryan wasn't just desperate, he was dangerous. And what happened next? It still gives me chills. It started a week after the court ruling. I was finally starting to feel normal again, sleeping better, focusing on work, even thinking about dating someday. But then, one night, my phone buzzed. It was a text. Blocked number. You'll regret this. My stomach dropped. I tried to stay calm, reminding myself that Ryan was still behind bars. There was no way it could be him. But that tiny voice in my head wouldn't let it go. So I called Megan. She checked with the authorities and sure enough, Ryan hadn't been released, but that didn't explain the texts. And it didn't prepare me for what came next. 2 days later, I came home to find my front door slightly open. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I just turn around and call the cops? Believe me, I thought about it. But something about the way the door was cracked, barely an inch, made my blood run cold. It felt personal, like whoever did it wanted me to know they'd been there. I stepped inside, slowly, carefully, and immediately saw the mess. Drawers pulled out, cabinets left open, papers scattered across the floor, but nothing was missing. Not my laptop, not my jewelry, not the cash I kept in the kitchen drawer. It wasn't a robbery. It was a message. And the moment I saw the note taped to my mirror, I knew exactly who it was from. You can't hide forever. I called the police right away, and to their credit, they took it seriously. They dusted for prints, checked the cameras, and even increased patrols in my area. But there was no evidence. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing, and that's when it hit me. Ryan didn't have to be out of jail to hurt me, because he still had people. People like Lily. Or worse, people I didn't even know about. I couldn't prove it, but my gut told me Ryan was pulling the strings from behind bars, just like he'd done before, and I wasn't about to let him win. So, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait around for him to make the next move. I was going to beat him at his own game. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator, again. But this time, it wasn't just to watch Ryan. I wanted to know who he was talking to, who was visiting him, and, most importantly, who was helping him from the outside. And let me tell you, the results were terrifying. Ryan had been busy. Even from jail, he was still making connections, using favors, threats, and promises to keep people under his thumb. And the worst part, Lily was still involved. Despite everything we'd talked about, she'd gone back to him. I don't know if it was fear, love, or just plain desperation, but she was helping him send the messages. And once I had the evidence, I went straight to the police. This time, they couldn't ignore it. Lily was arrested for violating the restraining order and conspiracy to harass me. And Ryan, let's just say his legal troubles got a whole lot worse. But even with them both out of the picture, I still couldn't relax, because after months of living in fear, I'd learned the hard way. Ryan wasn't the type to give up, so I took it one step further. I moved. New city, new job, new number. I even changed my name. Well, legally changed it back to my maiden name, but still, it felt like closing a chapter. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I started to feel free. Of course, the nightmares didn't stop right away, and every now and then, I still catch myself looking over my shoulder. But you know what? I survived. And if there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that survival isn't just about making it out alive. It's about reclaiming your life and refusing to let anyone take it from you. So, if you've made it this far, thank you for sticking with me. And if you're going through something similar, just know this: you're stronger than you think. Oh, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want more crazy stories like this one. Because trust me, there's always more drama where this came from. I'd like to sit here and tell you that once I moved, changed my name, and left my old life behind, everything magically fell into place. But the truth, healing isn't instant. For weeks after I settled into my new apartment, I still jumped at the sound of my phone ringing. I double-checked the locks every night before bed and peeked through the blinds every time I heard a noise outside. It's funny how much one person can shatter your sense of safety. But little by little, things started to change. I decorated my new place exactly the way I wanted: bright colors, soft furniture, and not a single reminder of my old life. I took yoga classes, read books I'd been putting off for years, and I even joined a local hiking group, which, believe me, was way out of my comfort zone. But you know what? It felt good. For the first time in years, I wasn't defined by Ryan or his lies. I wasn't the woman trying to fix a broken marriage or protect myself from a manipulative husband. I was just me, Emma. And let me tell you, being Emma, it felt amazing. Of course, Ryan's shadow didn't disappear completely. I still had to deal with a few final loose ends, like testifying against Lily in court. She ended up getting probation, by the way. Nothing too harsh, but enough to make her think twice before getting involved in another toxic relationship. And Ryan? His list of charges kept piling up: harassment, conspiracy, and fraud, just to name a few. Last I heard, he was serving a 5-year sentence with no chance of early release. And while a part of me wishes I'd never met him, another part of me knows I wouldn't be who I am today without going through all of it. Because here's the thing: Ryan tried to break me. He tried to make me feel small, powerless, and dependent on him. But in the end, all he did was show me how strong I really am. And as much as I hate what he put me through, I wouldn't trade the lessons I learned for anything. I learned how to stand up for myself, how to trust my instincts, and most importantly, how to walk away from someone who doesn't deserve me. Now, I know some people might look at this story and think, wow, that's a lot of drama for one person, and honestly, they're not wrong. But the truth is, this kind of thing happens more than people realize. Manipulators like Ryan are everywhere, hiding behind charm and lies, convincing people like me and Lily that they're someone they're not. So if there's one thing I hope you take away from this story, it's this: pay attention to the red flags. Because I ignored them for years, and it nearly cost me everything. But no matter how bad things get, you're never as stuck as you think you are. You can get out, you can rebuild, and you will come out stronger. Now, before I wrap this up, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire roller coaster of a story. And if you've made it this far, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Because let's be honest, this might be the end of this story, but life, it's always full of surprises. And who knows, maybe the next one will be even crazier. Thanks for watching.